Hello, everyone. It's a Friday afternoon coming all the way from Ontario, Canada. We have my friend, Wendy Noll. She and I have never actually met before, but we have met on similar networks. We're both on Life Network for Women. But she is an author. She is an addiction counselor. She has spent her life trying to help others overcome addictions, get in better healthy patterns. She is an ordained minister. She has got all kinds of education. And not only that, she's got some great practical experience. And your book is behind you, Ashes to Beauty. We all want to have that story as our life story, and only God can do that. So Wendy Noll, welcome.
Hi, Beth. Thanks for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yes, we've talked about this a few times, and we finally are here, so praise the Lord.
Amen.
So how did God bring you to care so much? I mean, you're living your life's purpose. You've gone to great lengths to be in a situation to be able to help people overcome addictions. What did God do in your life that led you to have a passion and a purpose for this?
Well, Beth, I think a lot of it was just my own, through my own lived experience. And, I took me 20 years to put my book together. It's not a book I wanted to write, but, it's kind of like those birth pangs when,
yes,
you're getting ready to birth. When you've got a book in you, like
yes,
it's coming out or it's just going to sit there.
Yeah.
And so I finally published the book in December of 2019. And yeah, it was a tough write. And apparently somebody doesn't want the message out there because when it was in the printers, every machine in the plant broke down trying to put my book out. And then when I had the launch starting, COVID hit. And so everything was just shut down. So I'm actually relaunching it again in the coming months. But how did I get there? I just... it's just me. Like I remember not too long ago, God gave me a kind of a nudge and said, daughter, just be you. Right. And so that's what I present. That's how I minister to people. I have no memory prior to the age of 8. I was sexually molested and gang raped at 14. So, my whole onset of early years was, primarily like I felt like a free-floating, kind of a free-floating anxiety where I didn't really belong anywhere. And I wasn't raised in a church, but God met me where I was at.
So how did you come to terms with those memories? I mean, those are some tough things. You don't have a memory but up until 8 years old. How did God, what did he do to begin to walk you back through some of that so that you can be who you are now? Because a lot of people don't understand the process of healing.
No.
And you've made a ministry out of it. So how did he begin to say, okay, I want you better. I want to heal you from all of this?
Right. Well, it was a very gentle and slow process. I mean, when I was 13, I started kind of my career in addiction, and I was in active addiction for many years. And then in March of 2000, sorry, that was the start of kind of my healing journey.
And you were addicted to what?
Everything but gambling.
Everything but gambling. So that's not just substances.
No. We have what's called process addictions, and those are things like eating disorders, gambling, sex and love addiction, workaholism, and so I was addicted to everything pretty much except for gambling.
So you basically did everything in excess.
That's right. And a lot of times people don't really understand the nature of addiction, right? So you use until you have to stop, and then you stop till you have to use, right? And, people think, well, if you just gave up the alcohol, the drugs, the behavioral addiction, that, everything would be wonderful. But that's not the case, because we're incessantly trying to fill this void that only God can fill, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't understand addiction. I mean, I wasn't raised in a family of addiction. I just tried and experimented just like anybody else, but I just, it overtook me, right?
So were you trying to escape the pain from your past?
Yes,
So you were
absolutely.
trying to not have to deal with that. So you
Yep.
just moved straight into numbing, self-medicating, and the next thing you know, you're dependent upon whatever it is to keep away and keep at bay those
Yep.
memories and those painful years so you didn't have to deal with it. But they came with you.
That's right. Well, they came with me when I sobered up.
Yeah.
But you know, my body developed a tolerance as well, right? So as my disease progressed, I needed more of that substance to produce the same effect. And in the end, I was at a place where it works until it doesn't, and it stopped working, right? I could use a substance of choice. I can't even tell you how much I would use, and I could not get the effects. I just couldn't do it, you know, and God was always with me. Like even as a young child, in my book, I talk a lot about nature, and that's where God met me. I felt safe in nature, and I just always would feel this presence, you know, and it was just, I can't even put it in words, like a goose flesh kind of reaction. And I just knew that there was, you know, something greater than me that had a plan and a purpose. And I came to know later that, you know, this was God, and, you know, he loved me, and he started to shape my identity in him and who he called me to be, not what the world says I am, right?
Yeah. So how did you come to break those addictions? That's a lot of addictions. So did you have to do one at a time? Did you get counseling? How did you begin to say, okay, I'm going to start peeling away some of these things? And how did you, you obviously were successful. How did you walk through that on a day-to-day basis to get to where you are now?
Well, a lot of, from as early as I can remember, I was in counseling, you know, whether it was group or I had some of the top doctors in Canada trying to help me. And often they would work with me for 2 or 3 years. And
that's because they knew you were traumatized?
Yeah. But I finally had to seek some kind of out of the box work and learning more about trauma as it's stored in the body and more of a systemic effect, and having to move, you know, that out of my body as well. But my biggest recovery journey was through building a relationship with God, you know, just because I loathed myself. Like there was nothing good that I could see out of my life, right? Not in an intrinsic sense. Like externally, I could build this facade, but inside I was dying, you know, and I didn't know how to feel good about me, you know.
And did you know you were dying? Obviously you knew you didn't see any value in yourself, but how do you, did you hit a rock bottom where you're like, okay, no, you didn't?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
All right.
I had several suicide attempts throughout my journey, but my final episode in 2000 nearly took me out. And that's when it was just this place of complete surrender. And it was from there he started to rebuild my life, right? And it was through a lot of practical demonstrations of love, right? He brought a lot of people around me that just loved me until I could love myself. You know, I never felt like I fit in anywhere, right?
Yeah. And you weren't raised in a church, so you weren't really, you weren't schooled in, just Jesus loves me, this I know. So that was probably foreign to you. You probably heard it for other people, but not for yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when I, did come to know the Lord, like I gave my heart to the Lord when I was 9. I still have the little red Bible. Mom did make us go to Sunday school for about 5 years when we were kids. We went to the Baptist church. So I guess I gave my heart. Remember, I had no memory, so I wrote it down. So I guess I gave my heart to the Lord when I was about 9. But then my addictions, I turned away from him, right? And I just got lost in this darkness.
And did you ever go back and face the abusers? Was anyone ever charged, or did you get closure with that, or did you just have to close that door and open a new one?
No, there was never any criminal actions, but I did through a lot of work and therapy, I did forgive. And I am at peace, total peace with it now.
Oh, but that couldn't have been as easy as you made it sound.
No. It was layer by layer. And again, it was, about self-identity and yeah. Who am I? I remember going to this doctor one time and, he would say, well, who are you? And I'd be like, so frustrated because I didn't know how to answer that question. And he says, Wendy, who do you want to be? And so that really started like an amazing kind of aha moment, because I felt like I had some sense of control in that, and then as we dig deeper in the word and God starts to tell me who I am, right? And it's like, oh, okay, all right, well, if you forgive me, I must be forgivable.
Wow. So then you go on to pursue you get your biblical studies degree and you become certified in addiction recovery. So that was, we've entered into a whole new level of the world is addicted now. And I'm sure you understand that as well as anyone. Almost everyone has had someone in their family that has been addicted to something. How do you best help people, whether it be the addicted person themselves or families? Because if one person in a family is addicted, the whole family is greatly affected by that. And so most families don't know how to deal with this. So how do you help people when you know that they're suffering from this and they need to change the direction they're headed in into a pattern of healing?
Well, love. Love is the answer that comes right to mind first.
Yeah.
I meet them where they're at. I don't even begin to say that I understand what you're going through, because even if I'm speaking with another addict that's self-identifying as an addict, I can't understand what they're going through. I can identify at some level, right? But I haven't walked in their shoes since, conception till now. And so it's just a lot of my own testimony sharing, loving on them, don't going in there with all these expectations. I'm not God. God is the only one that can transform their lives. But he can use me, as a message of hope. And, so a lot of my work lately has been with family members, like the loved ones of family, like addicts. And, I know I've been recently ordained, like you were saying, and the first funeral I did this year was actually a dear friend of mine who was 45 and died of an overdose. And, I did her funeral, and honestly, Beth, I could not fathom that God would choose me, as I'm putting the cross, ashes to ashes and dust to dust over her coffin. Like I was weeping and I'm like, oh my gosh, and then he started to unveil to me, started to show me, Wendy, I used Noah. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Well, Noah was the first known inebriant, right? So, he used a drunk to repopulate the world. The first thing he did when he got landed, and I couldn't understand that. I would have built a garden, but he built a vineyard, and so it's just through practical demonstrations of love. I've created Addiction 101 video on my website that's just basically everything that I've learned and taught to other people to train them for as addiction counselors. I've comprised this kind of snippet in a video so that they could go and try to begin to understand what their loved one is going through.
Well, so you said love well, and let's talk about what we don't do well, and which is usually love well. So if we have someone in our family that they're not doing what they're supposed to do, we deal with them in a physical realm. Your kid gets, off on alcohol, we ground them, we take their phones. We're really good at trying to impose boundaries on people that are making bad choices. But that's ineffective. Is that true? I mean, we got to do something, and I get that. And I've been there with my kids. I know what it is. You just want to keep them safe.
Right.
But how do we love people? I mean, meet them where they're at when we're so different from each other. And it seems like the Christians are the worst to other Christians sometimes. When a Christian hits a wall or falls or makes a really bad decision, we don't love them well. We accuse them well, and we take them down well. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not real good at what we got to practice what we preach and what we want others to do to us.
Right. I too have adult children that struggle with addictions, and even though I know what I know through years of lived and professional experience, I'm not effective with my own children. They're too close to me. Yeah. But what I do know is I have to get out of the way. And so when a family member, a loved one calls me and says, how can I help my loved one? My first answer is help yourself. And a lot of times the family doesn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear that as a mother. What do you mean, help myself? I'm talking about them. We're not talking about me. But that's all I can control is me. And trying to see things from a different perspective, trying to understand their perspective. Like, so when I was working on healing myself, my mom and I didn't always see eye to eye, but through looking at her life and her situation from a different perspective, I was able to just love her. And when I buried her 8 years ago, like, I had no regrets, right? And so it's just a lot of work. And when I start to work on myself, I don't feel the need, because it's all about trying to control my children, wanting the best for them. But I'm really trying to live vicariously through them. I'm trying to, this is my top, and, I want you to give you everything, but you don't seem to want it. And how could you become addicted when you've seen what I've gone through, but that's their journey. And so God would slowly teach me when to go in and when not to. I never give them money. I would maybe help them with practical means, listening.
That's what I was about to say. One of the ways we can love is to listen.
Listen. Yeah. Without judgment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know. Ouch.
You just made that really hard.
I know, because a lot of people, it's like, well, why don't you just give it up? But they just don't understand that, without God's help, without that spiritual aspect of recovery, I can't stop. My body, for whatever reason, doesn't process it. And so most people, if given sufficient reason, like a chronic illness, medical, financial or something, they can give it up. I can't. I had to be locked up to stop. And I had to go through withdrawal symptoms. I had to have medical care. I had to have, years of therapy. When you take away my soother, because that's what it is, you had better provide me something with depth and weight that's going to fill that purpose, that addiction. Like addiction,
it serves a purpose.
Right. It's not why the addiction, is why the pain. Right. And I don't know. There's really no manual on, because everybody is unique.
Yeah.
Right. But allowing people to feel the consequences of their own actions is a big part of it. I cannot play out anybody's recovery for them.
Or you can't rescue anyone out of it.
No.
Yeah.
And it's not even just the kids, because I work in the field, it's agonizing. I work with women that are human trafficked, that are, in sex trade, addiction today. Oh my goodness. You're dealing with, drugs like crystal meth and just drugs that we never even heard of 20 years ago. Right. Yeah. And the systemic effects on people. I mean, I've seen a girl go from 1 minute, she's vibrant, and even though she's active in her addiction, and 2 weeks later, she's literally gray, scab face. I'm just what happened? Like 2 weeks, something that would usually take us 10 years to progress, they're progressing in 2 weeks. It is heart-wrenching.
That is, and why is that? Is that because of the additives that the people are selling drugs and they're cutting in stuff?
Yeah.
And I mean, some of that stuff is deadly. I mean, all of it is deadly, but some of it is immediately deadly.
Right. You know, I often speak about, like, we're in a dual pandemic right now. We're not just dealing, like, a lot of times the whole of society has kind of forgot about this opiate crisis that we were in not too long ago, right? And it's gotten worse. I had one mother call me. I was working at a detox locally, and I had it was a sister, and she called me and she says, ma'am, I don't know what to do. She says, my sister is in this region, okay? And she said, the police will not even go in there unless there's like a death or a murder. I'm like, I didn't even know that. And this is a place that's only about an hour from me. It's not that far away.
And is it because it's so common that they're getting so many calls, they don't have the manpower?
Well, you know, I read in Revelations, I read in a commentary one time when I did my thesis on Revelations, and it says in the end of times, like the level of pain on the earth is going to get to such levels. Addiction is going to like just skyrocket. We think it's bad now. We haven't seen anything yet. So it goes back to that, you know, it's not why the addiction, but why the pain. And I mean, if you look at just even the housing crisis right now, I don't know what it's like in the US, but in Canada, I mean, we don't, as housing workers, case managers, we don't have answers. We don't know where we're sending people. And the winter's upon us. And I always think of that scripture too, that it talks about in Revelation, pray that it doesn't happen. The famines don't come in the winter. Yeah. You know? And so all we can do is, it's a real sense of, and that's where addiction helps me. It's a real sense of powerlessness. Yeah. You know, and really looking at, like, what are we here for? And that's why I love your show, like life's like purpose, that sense of purpose. And I believe that that's what we need to restore. We need to restore communities.
Yes, we do.
Family systems. And it's about this sense of connection and purpose.
And so let's talk about you brought up the opioid crisis, and people don't know what to think about that or what to do about that. But why don't we know more about what's causing this? But I don't know. I mean, my brother died of a heroin overdose. You know, he was in his 50s and had wrestled with that his whole life. And, you know, you could tell him just quit, or you could try to help him, or you could try to provide for him, you know, alternatives. But ultimately, he knew that was going to be how he died. And he chose it basically because, you know, he was addicted and didn't really care. So it's really, you know, when you see situations like that, again, it's in every family. Is it the user, or is it the industry? Is it the people is just so available? I mean, what is it that's causing this epidemic that is such widespread? I mean, how did it go from what it used to be taboo to now it's in every, it seems like it's a national, I mean, it is, it's an international crisis.
Yeah. There's so much more to it to unpack it, you know. So there's time, like my mother had a chronic illness, and so in her last days she was, you know, given different pain medications, and some of them were, you know, the fentanyl patch and so on. But there's a difference. Like, there's people that can develop a dependency on it to like actually manage pain. There's other people that start out with that and they end up becoming addicted. And there's availability aspects. There's, you know, there was a lot of double doctoring going on. You know, the black market selling pain medications. It's, you know, easy to get. It's cheap. And yeah, there's just so many factors. And the addiction, the capacity for a person to become addicted is just like that.
I mean, right? A day or two. I mean, you hear about the methamphetamines, and it does one time and you're addicted.
Yeah. But if you think about it from a spiritual aspect, Beth, it's really incredible because you've got your stimulants, which is cocaine, crack, cigarettes, even coffee. Those are all still really popular right now. You've got your depressants, alcohol, but with the opiates, they are a paralytic. So if you look at that spiritually and you look at the level of pain in the earth, oh, something just happened in my computer. Can you still see me?
Yep, I still see you. I still hear you.
Okay, so you look at the levels of pain in the earth, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
That people are looking for that pain medicator,
relief,
right?
immediate relief. People are just trying to numb the pain.
That's right.
So, back to the solution. So if you've got someone in your family or of someone that's struggling with this, let's talk through how to manage that or how to help. So love well without judgment, which is a very big deal. Listen. Again, without judgment, but let the person share their story, because it's not the drug, it's the pain, right? You said that. That was a great quote. It's not about the drug, it's about the pain. The drug's numbing a pain and you want to get to the pain. Right. And people don't share that easily. You have to get in relationship with them to finally get to the pain, right?
That's right. And that's a huge part, Beth, the relationship. Yeah. Right. And it's like kind of long suffering too. Like not just, okay, great, here, okay, goodbye. But just that long development of relationship. It's about allowing consequences too. Right. And it hurts. Yeah, like it does. When you really unpack the fear levels that go along with family members and sitting back and feeling powerless with their struggle, it's that whole aspect of, what if they die?
Yeah, if I don't do this
they're going to die. Right.
And you feel responsible for not doing something to save the day, and ultimately you can't.
That's right.
Only God can save the soul, which begins to rebuild the life. And you said that even, when you were young and you turned to drugs, it's because you felt no value. You had no sense of identity. And it wasn't until the guy asked you, Wendy, what do you want to do? That you thought, well, nobody's ever asked me that before. That's a great question to ask someone. What do you want to do with your life? And begin to help them start thinking about something that gives them hope, because hope is a big deal.
It is. I remember my grandpa telling me one time, he says, now, Wendy, he says, the problem in the world today is when they allowed women to, include women's income in major purchases like a house. I'm like, Gramps, come on. And he's like, now listen a minute. He says, like, he's an old Gramp. He wasn't being judgmental, but he's saying, when you think about it, we're really shifting family systems and family dynamics. Like God designed women for nurturing, for being at home, for loving and taking care of the children. The men went out to earn, you know what I mean? And so when we had this shift, like both parents, we're in a place where just greed and consumerism is taking over. Kids are being raised by video gaming and TV. And I'm not judging. I'm just like, if you want the solution, you need to come back to learn from our forefathers, right? Learn from the forerunners and get back to basics, like
Wait, we lost your sound. There.
Hello?
Yep.
Hello?
There you are. Yeah.
Oh, so
we need each other.
There you are. Yeah. So, and you said that before. You said we need to get back to the basics of family and community.
That's right.
And that's so missing in our, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So that's going back to the basics and taking care of your family and being, we as women, I have no shame in the fact that we sacrificed a lot for me to stay home with my kids, because my mom had to work 2 jobs because she was a single mom raising 5 kids. And thank God she did it. But, I really wanted to try to give my kids an opportunity to be raised by me. And So that's a basic thing that was important to me because I had lived the opposite of that. So I was able to come from my experience and say that. And then church community. I mean, how important is that?
Yeah. Oh, I know.
It is.
And really when you look at it, like women, I find, this is just my perspective, need that emotional aspect, that connection, and to be able to talk, talk out your emotions. Whereas men seem to resolve life situations by coming together and working,
Yeah.
And
Watch
so
a football game.
Yeah, like so back in the day, women would be home, and whether they're baking or cooking or making a quilt or something, there's still that sense of women community. You get your kind of your vent session and your support, and then you go home and you're good to go. And the guy's been out working, and so then you have your quiet time at night with your families. And I saw that. My cousin married a Mennonite, so I saw that growing up, but I really didn't know how to experience that, right?
Yeah.
And so like I really have a longing to be home more with my grandbabies.
Yeah, me too.
Because I didn't get to do that growing up because I had to work,
Exactly right. Yeah.
And so, and we can change this. We can.
And we can. And that ties into my last question because we got to wrap it up. But living a life on purpose is being intentional about how you feel God has gifted you, what you feel like God has placed in your heart to do. I mean, basically in a nutshell, you're helping people recover from addictions. I mean, that's what God's called you to do. That's got a lot of things wrapped up into that, but you're gifted to do that because you've walked it, and you can, if you've walked a walk, you can talk the talk. But that's about being intentional. So whatever it is, we've got to shut down everything. I believe purpose is really not as much about what you do. It's about what you don't do. And it's about where you don't go. It's eliminating what's not your purpose. And what you're saying, and I agree with you 100%, is getting back to the basic core of what's healthy for your family and doing that and not letting anything else disturb that.
That's right. Absolutely. Sometimes I look around at, evangelists and all that, and I'm like, oh God, like, where are you calling me? And he keeps bringing me back. He's like, right here.
Yeah.
Your children, your grandbabies, your community, your family, your friends, right here. This is where I'm calling you, one heart at a time.
And one day at a time.
That's right.
One story at a time. And we think we want to be able to do 5 years at a time, and he doesn't give us the grace for that. Well, we're going to end there. So your ministry is called Ashes to Beauty. People can find your book on your website.
Yeah, so my book is called Ashes to Beauty, and my ministry is Wendy Noll Ministries, and I have a website, wendynollministries.com. So you can order a book through there and find out, different supports and things that might be useful to support addicts and their families.
So people could buy your book and use your program to help someone or help themselves.
Absolutely.
And then they could reach out to you via that too if they wanted to talk to you, because that's what you do as well. You help people. So that's great.
I do.
Well, thank you so much, Wendy. I'm glad we got to finally talk. We'll have to come back around and do this again because it's an ever-changing world.
It is.
And you stay warm this winter because I know it's going to get cold in Canada. I'm going to be in Louisiana, and I'm going to be warm for you.
I'm going to have to come visit.
Come on, girl. Come on.
Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.